When you think of deserts, what comes to mind? Endless dunes, scorching heat, and wind-blown sand stretching as far as the eye can see. Most people picture a place where life struggles to survive, a hostile, barren land that seems impossible to farm. But in one of the most extreme deserts on Earth, the Taklimakan Desert in China, something extraordinary has happened. A vast golden wheat field now sways in the wind, covering the sand like a dream painted onto the desert canvas. Why is this so shocking? Wheat is one of the most common crops in the world, but it normally needs fertile, nutrient-rich soil, stable temperatures, and a steady water supply. It's not built for relentless heat, brutal dryness, or shifting sandstorms. Yet here, Chinese agronomists have defied what most experts would call nature's rules. They've turned the harsh, arid expanse into a thriving field, showing that even the desert can be tamed with the right science and determination. It's almost like planting a garden on the moon or growing rice on an iceberg, completely counterintuitive, almost magical. And it immediately sparks a question. If China already has millions of hectares of fertile farmland, why would anyone choose to risk planting wheat in one of the toughest deserts on the planet? This is where our story begins, not just with a miracle in the sand, but with a bold experiment that challenges the limits of agriculture and human ingenuity. At first glance, planting wheat in the desert might seem like a curiosity, a daring experiment with no real purpose. But the truth is, desert farming has a lot more at stake than just proving a point. It's not just about turning sand into wheat. It's about transforming entire landscapes, ecosystems, and communities. Think about it this way. A barren desert is like an empty canvas. With the right approach, it can be painted green again. By planting crops, deserts can be turned into oases that support life. Not only plants, but animals, insects, and humans. Vegetation slows the wind, traps water, and even helps capture carbon from the atmosphere. Over time, what was once a harsh, empty landscape can become a small but vital hub of biodiversity. And the benefits aren't only environmental. Desert farming can bring real economic value to areas that were previously considered useless. Crops create income, local markets thrive, and communities gain access to food and jobs. Imagine families in remote desert towns watching a field of golden wheat sway in the wind, knowing it's providing for their children and neighbors. For China, this isn't just an experiment, it's a long-term necessity. The country has vast deserts, including the Gobi and the Taklimakan, covering millions of hectares. Transforming even a fraction of that land into productive farmland could relieve pressure on crowded agricultural regions and strengthen food security. In other words, desert farming isn't just a scientific stunt. It's a strategic solution with ecological, economic, and social impact. By understanding why this matters, we can see that the miracle wheat field isn't just beautiful, it's purposeful. And now, to truly appreciate this achievement, we need to look back at the long history of how China has fought to tame its deserts. China's deserts didn't become fertile overnight. Behind today's miracle wheat fields lies decades of tireless effort to control and transform the desert. For generations, people saw deserts as unstoppable forces, sand advancing, swallowing farmland, and forcing communities to retreat. But China refused to accept this fate. It all began with a method called grid sand control. Imagine drawing a massive invisible grid over a desert and planting vegetation or building barriers in each square to stop the sand from moving. It was simple in concept, but monumental in scale. Over the years, millions of people worked on this painstaking task, planting trees, shrubs, and grasses to gradually stabilize the dunes. Fast forward to today, and China has moved into high-tech desert control. Advanced methods like photovoltaic sand stabilization combine solar power with vegetation, creating energy-producing green belts across the desert. The results are staggering. Over 20 million hectares of desert have been transformed, turning the narrative from sand advancing, people retreating to green advancing, sand retreating. This historical groundwork is what makes desert wheat possible now. The land isn't just sand, it's carefully managed, partially stabilized, and primed for agriculture. Chinese agronomists didn't start from scratch. They built on decades of environmental mastery. In other words, the miracle wheat field isn't just a science experiment. It's the culmination of a long, strategic journey to tame some of the harshest land on Earth. With this history in mind, the stage is set to understand just how difficult it is to grow wheat in the desert, and why what comes next seems almost like a fairy tale. Now let's zoom in on Maigaiti County, the place where China dared to grow wheat in the desert. Picture this: 90% of the county is desert, surrounded on three sides by shifting sand dunes. Much of the land is covered in saline alkali soil, either lightly salty or heavily toxic to plants. If you tried to plant wheat here using traditional methods, it would be almost impossible. Why is it so hard? First, desert soil is nutrient poor. Wheat normally thrives in rich, organic soil, but here the ground barely supports a blade of grass. Water evaporates almost instantly in the scorching heat, leaving the soil dry and cracked. Add to that sandstorms, which can sweep across the land in minutes, burying seeds or young plants under meters of sand. And the temperatures? They swing wildly, freezing cold at night and blistering heat during the day. Under these conditions, wheat growing here seems like a fairy tale. It's not just a challenge, it's a test against nature itself. Every factor works against life. The soil is hostile, water is scarce, and the weather is unpredictable. And yet, this is exactly where Chinese agronomists decided to innovate. They didn't just fight the desert, they worked with it, finding ways to give wheat a fighting chance. The question now is, how did they do it? What science and technology could possibly turn sand into thriving wheat fields? Turning a desert into a wheat field wasn't magic. It was science, innovation, and precise planning. Chinese agronomists faced extreme conditions, so they had to rethink every step of planting, watering, and fertilizing. First, they leveled the desert surface with incredible precision. Sand dunes were flattened to ensure height differences of less than 5 centimeters, tiny enough to prevent sand from rolling over newly planted seeds. Timing was critical. Any delay could mean sandstorms undoing weeks of work in a single day. Next came water and fertilizer management, a true desert-adapted system. Traditional irrigation wouldn't work. The water would evaporate too quickly. So they developed an integrated system, controlled by mobile apps, that delivered timed and measured doses of water and nutrients directly to the wheat roots. This wasn't just efficient, it reduced water use by 35% and fertilizer use by 30%, saving resources while boosting growth. They also improved the soil itself. Using organic matter, sand fixation agents, and antibacterial sprays, the team made the desert soil more hospitable. These innovations helped wheat resist disease, retain moisture, and survive harsh winds and heat. The result? What once seemed impossible became a replicable, scalable process. The fairy tale of wheat growing in the desert was no longer a dream, it was a proven reality. Technology had turned one of the harshest landscapes on Earth into a golden, thriving field of wheat. After months of careful work, the results were nothing short of astonishing. In June 2024, the wheat planted in the Taklimakan desert was ready for harvest. Large harvesters moved through the golden fields, collecting 3,000 tons of high-quality wheat with a bulk density of 825 grams per liter, meeting the standard for first-grade quality. On average, each mu of land produced over 260 kilograms of wheat. But the story doesn't stop there. Chinese agronomists are planning the next steps, expanding desert wheat fields to 50,000 mu within 5 years, and aiming to increase yields to 400 kilograms per mu. The goal is clear, not just to grow wheat in one desert, but to develop a scalable system that can turn other barren areas into productive farmland. The broader impact is huge. This achievement demonstrates the power of human ingenuity in agriculture. It shows that even harsh, seemingly lifeless deserts can become productive ecosystems. It also creates opportunities for economic growth, as new farmland can support local communities, generate income, and improve food security. In short, this isn't just a success story, it's a proof of concept. It proves that with technology, careful planning, and persistence, deserts can be transformed into thriving fields. China's desert wheat success isn't just a national story, it has global implications. Many countries face the same challenge: vast desert areas, limited water, and a growing need for food. Saudi Arabia is a prime example. Historically, Saudi Arabia tried to turn its deserts into wheat fields. In the 1980s and 1990s, ambitious projects briefly made the country a major grain producer, even becoming the sixth largest wheat exporter in the world. But the boom didn't last. Groundwater ran low, overuse of fertilizers degraded the soil, and production collapsed. Today, much of the country's food comes from imports. This is where China's desert wheat technology could make a real difference. With advanced water and fertilizer management, soil stabilization, and planting techniques adapted to arid environments, the same principles that turned the Taklimakan desert into a wheat field could help Saudi Arabia restore its deserts sustainably. The benefits would be huge: increased vegetation coverage, stabilized sand dunes, improved soil fertility, and boosted water retention. On top of that, it could spark economic growth, creating jobs, supporting agricultural industries, and improving food security. If widely adopted around the world, this approach could help countries struggling with desertification turn barren land into productive farmland. It's a global vision. One country's ingenuity could inspire a solution to some of the planet's most pressing agricultural and environmental challenges. Here's key point 8, conclusion and call to action. From barren sand dunes to golden wheat fields, this story shows what human ingenuity and science can achieve. Deserts, once seen as impossible enemies, can now become productive land with the right technology, planning, and determination. China's success in the Taklimakan Desert isn't just about wheat, it's about transforming landscapes, supporting communities, and inspiring global solutions. The journey we've explored goes from the harsh desert environment to decades of desert control, to innovative technology, and finally to real results with local and global impact. It proves that challenges like desertification and food scarcity can be tackled with creativity, persistence, and science. And the story doesn't end here. As China plans to expand desert wheat fields, and as countries like Saudi Arabia explore these technologies, the potential to reshape deserts worldwide is within reach. What once seemed impossible is now happening, and it could influence the future of agriculture for generations to come. If you want to stay updated on amazing projects like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. By following, you'll be the first to learn about breakthroughs in technology, agriculture, and environmental innovation that are changing the world, one desert at a time.